right, I guess we're ready. Good evening, Michigan City, Indiana. And thank you all again for coming out to another exciting meeting of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission. This is a special meeting called, frankly, because we have so much stuff on our agenda that we want to make sure that we keep things moving and continue to show progress in the community. But it definitely puts a strain on everybody to try to stay up with all the good things that are going on. I apologize for a little late delay here. Normally we have an executive session in front of this. Today we didn't, so Craig was distributing some materials that will be used as part of the agenda. So with that, let the records show that all commissioners here, with the exception of Pat Kowalski, and we have a modest agenda this evening, 17 items. So let's get right into it. Item number 3, landscape maintenance contract approvals, PR Lawn Care.
Okay, I'll preface this. Dave, if you want to come up and join us. So we have proposals from PR's Lawn Care for properties that are located in the South TIF district, most of which we recently acquired and we never had contracts with before. So I'll go through these pretty quickly, and Dave, if you want to add anything to these. You should have a stack of the properties in a packet that you got handed out. The first one is the property known as the Ameriplex House, or 355 East US Highway 20. That's the property that we recently acquired. This proposal is basically for just landscaping and upkeep, exterior upkeep of the house. Cost per man hour for the initial mowing and cleanup, just to kind of tidy things up to get it ready for consistent maintenance. A cost for $55 per man hour, and then 22 weekly mowings at a total cost of $5,390. So these are probably in keeping pretty similar with other properties that we maintain. So in terms of prices, so we need to take
what
these
we've done in
one
the
by
past
one.
on these is go item by item. Obviously, we want the property owned by the Redevelopment Commission to set the example for other properties in the community that we do need to maintain and keep up our public image for the city. So I don't know if there's any
questions
we do
about
need
that one?
to the extent we can. We'd love to approve these this evening because spring's here. So,
Spring's here. So
any questions or comments for Dave?
I just have one question.
What's that?
I know these are yearly costs, but the dates are May of 2019 through October of 2019.
the growing season.
Right, that's the growing season.
Thank you.
Have you been out there?
Yes,
Yeah, he was out there with me yesterday or Wednesday.
Friday.
Because this is the property that our squatter is on, right?
Sorry, yes.
Is he not maintaining that?
He is, but it's not to our standard.
Well, that was what I was
That's
going
all I was
to
asking.
ask.
But he's going
on
to
the
be,
front end of
but
this.
he'll likely be gone soon, so we have to have a contract to maintain.
Right. Oh, I'm not disqualifying that. I'm just simply saying. So I just wondered.
Yeah, it's
Is
pretty
it
tall.
really?
It's pretty tall out there yet. I mean, it only recently.
Well, I mean,
So this one's pretty simple, straightforward. It's just to do the mowings of that property.
well, I don't know. I think it's a good point that's brought up, though. So
Of what?
well, in fact, that he has some rights to be on the property for
No,
a
he
short
does.
term here.
Well, no, he doesn't actually. He's been given an eviction notice, and
He's been given notice to vacate, and he had 30 days in which to do that in keeping with the law. That's a completely separate issue, and I will give him formal.
it's our property. So
Right, and we have to maintain it. I
Right.
guess, and I'm a little disappointed that I've been assured that he was mowing and
That's
keeping
exactly
it looking
my point.
nice and things like that. And if he's not doing that, then
Would you say it was, Craig?
No, I would not.
I was just curiosity. That's all. I will.
I believe he had up to this point, but I think he's in the process of moving out as we speak.
Okay.
Because the day we were there,
It had been mowed this
there were a
season.
number of items outside.
Okay, so it had been
Okay. All
Right,
right.
it had been.
So,
It's just
all right.
tall.
very tall right now.
It's taller than we would normally maintain our properties.
All right,
So he is in the process of moving out from what we saw, and
satisfies me anyway. So. All right. So, what's the pleasure of the commission? Second, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed. All right.
The next one is the pond adjacent to Ameriplex Drive that we acquired as part of the overall development agreement for that area. This is just simply to mow the grass areas on the edge of the ponds for the remaining 22 weeks of the growing season.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right.
This next one is to maintain the grass strip adjacent to Cleveland Avenue, north of Highway 20, property that we own adjacent to Barker Middle School, to the south of Barker Middle School. Somebody's been mowing that, so let's do this as an as-needed approval. We'll find out who's been maintaining this, whether it's the schools or the fire department. But just in the event that for whatever reason, they find out, oh, it's not ours to maintain. We've got a contract, and we don't have to worry about it. So I think
That's something you'll manage with Dave.
we'll look into that and figure out
Okay.
what's going on there. We just didn't have time to do that between this,
All right.
now in this meet or the time we met in this meeting.
Pleasure of the commission. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
So the next one is similar work on the property that we own south of the new Haskell building. To the south of the Michigan City Chrysler, there we have the Haskell building, and the property to the south of that, all the way to Tim Drive, is owned by the Redevelopment Commission. So in a similar manner, it's mowing of the grass area that it's adjacent to the roadways for the 22 rainy weeks in the growing season.
So just clarification for me, Tim Road is,
The extension of Meyer Drive, next to the theater.
okay, so it goes between the theater and us? Or is there property?
Yes, it's the road between the theater
It's
and our
got a little
property.
S in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We recently went out and removed the signs that were previously on the property. We're just trying to keep the property looking better than it was in the past.
I had to start June 1st, because we talked about, we need to figure out what's going on. So let's, starting on June 1st.
That one's
A
fun.
little
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Second.
Any further discussion, questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The next one is the actual landscape maintenance work for the property that we own at the corner of Michigan Boulevard and 8th Street. It's kind of that little pocket park that says Elston Grove on it, and has the landscape plantings. We have a contract to reestablish the landscape
To
plantings,
maintain the plantings.
but not the lawn area itself. I think Dave was under the impression that the city was going to maintain the lawn area itself. But it's not being done, and we need that looking good because that's a pretty major intersection. And so he is suggesting the maintenance of that. Let's do the maintenance first, the last page. The initial mowing and cleanup, basically to make it possible to maintain it easier and then for the remaining 22 weeks. And then the 22 weeks of mowing the grass areas. So a total of $1,430 for the weekly mowing of the grass and $55 per man hour for the initial cleanup. So let's do that one first.
All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
And then
Well,
sorry.
let's finish this. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I noticed that this one kind of got out of range on us a year or two ago anyway, so it's a good
We
one
found
to
out
do.
we owned it a couple years ago.
Oh, maybe that was what it
yeah.
was, okay.
So anyway,
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank
and
you.
then secondarily to that, just so the grass gets established properly for the season and is maintained properly, the suggestion of 7 applications of fertilizer and treatment as listed. So crabgrass pre-emergent, grub control, broadleaf weed treatments for $308.
All right. Pleasure of the commission.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. Any more questions?
No.
So, go ahead.
I am looking into the other 2 properties that we mentioned, so we're still looking into that. So
General question, is there, for quote, the "You Are Beautiful" site, anything, it looks greener this year, I suppose that's a good thing. Anything
I know they were
else
out
to
there
be
mowing
done there or
yesterday.
not, or? No? Okay.
Apartments or hotels or something.
I noticed you guys were out there mowing that yesterday, so yeah.
The grass itself will respond to the fertilizer. And that is not the type of grass that will fill it. It's a clump grass and non-rhizomatous grass and seeded there.
Okay,
And that's,
well, hopefully at some
It's
point
gonna be
it'll
what it is.
developed
So we're
into
doing the
something
best,
different,
we're doing the best we can with the type of grass that it is, without completely renovating the surface. We have to do the best we can with the type of grass that's been planted.
Sure.
And the status of the property remains uncertain in the near future as far as whether or not that's going to be a development site or not. So renovation of the entire, block may not be in the best interest, and just keeping it looking as good as we can
Sure.
probably is.
All right, any questions for Dave? Good?
if there is any questions or anything comes up, please let us know, because we want to make sure we're doing what the board wants us to be doing.
Thanks.
So if there's anything that's out of order, please let us know.
As I mentioned on the front end, I think it is important for us to maintain our properties well.
We still,
We're very happy with the work you did last year.
since Dave's here, because I know it's going to come up at some point again, the property that we own at the northeast corner of 8th and Michigan, there's significant areas of Phragmites that have infiltrated that property, and we're a little bit still up in the air on whether or not we're going to be able to treat that or not, because I was asked that question recently about how come there's all that tall grass growing on that property. It's because we wanted to be careful with the chemical application that we normally would put on our properties on that property because of the status of the groundwater testing
Yeah, so
and soil testing on that
impact
property.
our own
So we don't want to create a false negative type situation for our own testing. So just so everybody's aware, that's what's happening on that property. So the areas that are not tall grass will maintain as regular lawn like we have been, but we're just not sure what to do about the Phragmites yet because of the status of that chemical testing that we need to do.
All right. I think we're good to go. Thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
All right, item number 4. This is kind of an exciting one. Proposed redevelopment agreement with Bozak Auto Group. I see we have some representatives from Bozak here. I don't know who wants to come to the podium or. All right, thank you. So the illustrious Pat Reardon, if you could. So in general, what I appreciate is if you would kind of thank you for having the Bozak representatives here too, and I see you have your general contractor too, so that's great with Larson Danielson. But if you would, at a high level, well, first off, introduce yourselves, and then secondly, at a high level, describe the project and the investment, the employees, the wages, that stuff, for us just to let the community know why we're interested in your new investment.
I want to thank the Commission for its time and consideration. My name is Pat Reardon. I'm the project consultant, and this is, unless you have a specific question for me, likely the last time you're going to hear from me tonight. I want to introduce Mr. Greg Bozak with the Bozak Auto Group, and we have a representative of the general contractor, Larson Danielson, here. Greg?
Hi, everybody. I'm Greg. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the consideration. We're building a new state-of-the-art Honda dealership on our property at, I think it's 700 Highway 20, which will allow us to expand. We have an opportunity for, I think, 15 to 20 new employees in various levels of skill and development, mechanical, trades, entry-level, salespeople. Should be a significant increase in our payroll and our contribution to the city. We're doing it because our current facility is a bit outdated, and we want to update it. So we want to build something that'll be functional and something that'll look nice for the community and give us a chance to expand, grow, and hire some more people. Does that answer the question pretty well?
Just talk about the total investment. If you
Total
would.
investment is be about 3.6. By the time we're done, 3.7 million dollars is what the total project will be. Probably a little more than that when you figure out some of the other investments on the inside with lifts and equipment and IT and things like that, and then a little bit more for what we worked out with the sanitation district to satisfy their needs, which we've come to an agreement with them. And so I guess that 3.6 probably end up being more like 3.8, 3.9.
And you're asking for a total of $380,000 of commitment of TIF dollars from the South TIF District from the Commission.
Yes, sir.
To assist with that project.
Sure. And let me just inquire just a little bit more. We routinely get questions, the mayor, us, others involved in trying to move the community forward, that we're not bringing enough high-paying jobs into the area.
Mhm.
And as I understand it, you have a number of highly paid technical positions as part of this expansion. Maybe you could describe those a little bit.
Well, they range from sales representative, product specialist, going anywhere from $50,000 a year up to $120,000, $130,000 a year. Technicians, which is one of our big ones, we're looking at 3 or 4 more technicians. Those can be anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000, $130,000 jobs, based on the projected increase in customers, vehicles, units in operation. Those jobs are highly sought after, and they're good paying jobs. In addition to some lower level jobs too.
And as I understand it too, that Michigan City's in some significant competition for this project.
Yes, yeah, our particular franchise could go to Michigan City, could go to LaPorte, could go to Chesterton. Within Honda's scope and state laws, we have a few different options. We're in Michigan City right now. We want to stay in Michigan City. We have property in Michigan City, but there are opportunities, and we could go somewhere else. Yes.
And if you were to decide to go someplace else, does that jeopardize the future investment in Michigan City?
Oh yeah, definitely. We'd have 2 buildings we would sell.
And how many jobs would we be retaining as well?
If you count the new ones that we're expecting, roughly 80 to 90 jobs.
Right. Well, that answers most of my questions as far as a summary. Let's ask the commissioners if they have questions on the project or not. I know we've reviewed the basics of this in the executive session. So,
But if I remember correctly, it was about a $1.5 million payroll,
Yes.
and then 40 new jobs, or 30.
Well, I wouldn't say 40. I'd say
Well,
more
I mean,
like
I think the
20,
total is
25.
at 45 jobs at the moment, and everything plus the new jobs.
Correct.
I think that's what we're here for.
Right.
all right. So, and Mr. Cernak, you might describe a little bit, because I understand this is adjacent to the TIF, but it's not in the TIF. So,
That's correct. A couple of things just to mention where we are. First of all, this is outside the South TIF, but pretty much de minimis adjacent to it. And clearly the project that's being described by Bozak and what we've talked about with Pat, even though he won't talk, this clearly is an upgrade to the current property. Clearly is an upgrade that if they abandon the property, but most importantly, I think several things from our perspective, but we talked about the undertaking we did a couple of years ago with regards to the South Gateway Corridor the South Corridor project, that this is the ideal project that we talked about. That we look at Highway 20 as another entryway into the city, and when that plan was first developed and we identified what we needed to do, and what the commission needed to do, and what Michigan City needed to do, getting rid of vacant property, dilapidated buildings was clearly high on the list. So this addresses that plan, those objectives as well. As for what we're doing tonight, that kind of like we've done with other things, other projects, is that I have prepared a economic development agreement between the Redevelopment Commission and Bozak in accordance with the requirements of the law, and generally summarizing, we enter into this agreement. We will ultimately have a licensing agreement with Bozak that would allow us to go in and make the various kind of improvements or contributions to the project, which we'll get into here in a second. And then once those projects have been completed, then we terminate the licensing agreement. But that's what we have to do in terms of the law is concerned, to allow us to expend TIF dollars on projects that we have an interest in, if we don't necessarily own it. So we're really doing two things. Oh, the other things I want to mention and highlight, the economic development agreement has two contingencies in it, one of which has now been satisfied. One of the letters I distributed prior to the meeting was from the sanitary district, and as Mr. Bozak said, that the plan that has been submitted to them meets now with their approval, so that meets one of the contingencies. The second one, as it relates to the actual building itself, my understanding, Craig, is there have been conversations between the planning department and particularly Larson Danielson,
Between
that they meet, that we have approval, but there's not been some plans formally submitted yet.
correct. We've reviewed a revised set of plans that appear to comply with the standards. Just would ask that this approval be contingent upon final review
Right.
of the standards. I don't expect any issues with that based on what I've seen. So it would just be a contingency attached
that would
to
be the
approval.
second contingency. So, if, as Commissioner Sheets said, this is what we're here for. If the rest of you are inclined to do that, we need to approve the economic development agreement tonight. And then, because we're kind of under, or Bozak is under a time crunch, but also because we want to finish this as quickly as possible, and to move things forward, they will also be presenting a request to distribute or give notice to bidders. But let's take up the economic development agreement first.
And this would not be a bonding process, this is more or less with cash on reserve, right?
That's correct.
Funds on reserve.
So would we just also reflect under the project development, Article 3, the dollar amount, the adjusted dollar amount that he
Yes.
spoke of?
380,000.
Right. Oh, the 3.9 million as opposed to the 4.2?
Right.
Just so it's clear.
Clear.
Okay.
All right, first of all, are there any more questions from commissioners? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Second.
Been moved and seconded, approve it with the contingencies that were discussed. Any further discussion?
Let me also say one more thing. In the economic development agreement that I gave you earlier for your consideration, there were Exhibit A was blank as it relates to the legal description, and Pat indicates he brought with him tonight the legal description, so we will attach that. And then I'm hoping that our engineer, our contractor, our general contractor will tell us what Exhibit B is, and we can attach it accordingly.
Okay, we can take the action before seeing Exhibit B, is that correct? Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So, I see Tony Ossis here from Larson Danielson. Come up and address Mr. Sirnick's questions, I guess. Thank you all.
Thanks to the commission, Tony Oss with Larson Danielson Construction. Just here representing Larson Danielson as the design builder and general contractor on the Bozak Honda project.
If you could start by giving a description of what the actual project is, the building itself, the new building, and what it's going to look like.
So currently on this site, as you all know, is an existing, I guess it's an old Jeep dealership. The building's going to be demolished and torn down. A brand new facility for Bozak Honda will be built in its place. It's approximately 20,000 square feet. It's a steel structure. The building will have a glass and aluminum composite panel front facade. The building will house all their sales operations as well as staffing for office and administration, sales, and then obviously a shop area that's going to have all the service.
And then what are the specific things or aspects of the project that the Redevelopment Commission is being asked to contribute to the $380,000?
My understanding, and I have to kind of defer, I was asked to be here in Tim Larson's stead, but you can correct me if I missed something here. My understanding is it's the front facade aluminum composite, some site improvements to address some site infrastructures, as well as a demolition of the existing facility. Did I cover all the bases there?
In the notice to bidders that he provided to me earlier, that he has bid package 1 would be the earthwork, building demolition, and site utilities. Bid package 2 was sheet metal and roofing, ACM, and bid package 3 was landscaping.
Okay, so those would be the three.
Those would be
The three packages. That's what I understand as well. Yep.
Okay, and I guess the question I really had for both you or Tim is, it's hard for me to believe that those three things are going to come in under $380,000. Or am I way off base on that?
My understanding is those 3 items were selected based on the budgets that we
Okay.
had calculated for those,
Okay.
for those 3 packages of work.
Okay. We can cross that bridge later if it comes in over the 380, but we'll figure that out later. And then the second thing, just as a matter of record, even, and again, just for the commissioner's understanding, is that in effect, we're relying on Larson Danielson to be the project manager, the construction manager for the project for our $380,000 also. It just makes sense to do it that way rather than have a different construction manager do this aspect of the project, kind of like, again, when we did the Blue Chip project. However, it's clear though from this 380,000, 2 things. One is that we're gonna have to follow the regular bidding process, which is what we're here for, part of what we're here for tonight. And then the second part is just to make sure that everybody's aware that these are 3 aspects of the project that were chosen by Larson Danielson because you guys have no interest in doing these things, correct?
Correct.
So we don't get into a situation of where they're,
Right, where they compete against themselves, right?
or where they're awarding a bid to themselves, which obviously they can't do, so.
Correct. We would definitely comply with all state laws in regards to bidding processes.
And the commitment this evening is for 380,000. So if it comes in above those bids, let's on Bozak, it'd be my understanding of what we're doing here.
For a second, we're gonna go a little higher.
Okay.
No.
I just want to be clear.
And
You
we're
guys
all,
are in car sales, I assume.
and Michigan City's gonna get all new cars too if we have to go over, is that correct? Absolutely.
Right.
I think we all understand that provision.
But,
And that means that the hiring requirements and everything else for the city are compliant.
Absolutely.
But the 308, that is spelled out in the economic development agreement, is the fact that we will not go above that, so that's where we are, so. And that's why I asked the question, that in the event the bids come in higher than 380, then we do have we have flexibility within the agreement to address that situation, but that we also, you're right, Don, we need to make sure that that's clear, that that's when we can't go above that, so.
Absolutely.
All right, I assume you're in favor of this? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. All right, any further discussion? Well, we don't need it. Do we need to approve this too?
You need to approve
Notice the bidders.
allowing Larson Danielson as our construction manager to go forth with notice to bidders for the 3 bid packages that were mentioned earlier.
All right. What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to approve.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. Looks like
Thank
we're good to go. About when do you anticipate starting construction and completion, just at a high level?
Well, that's the next thing we need to talk about.
All right.
And I'll go through it quick. We just, ultimately, I mean, we can do one of 2 things here. And I think when I've talked with Tim, he indicates it's approximately a 10-month project from beginning to end. So we can actually plug that last date in based on the first date, and that is that, and that's really kind of where we're going to go from this point, is that do we have a special meeting between now and our July meeting, or do we have actual awarding of bids at the July meeting? And that's the first question. And if the answer to the first question is that we will just do an awarding of bids at the July meeting, then I can plug in the dates later on. If we're going to have a special meeting for the specific purpose of awarding bids on this project, we're looking at somewhere around 30 to 35 days out.
So just my high-level thought, somebody else disagree with me, is that we want to help you keep in line with your construction schedule. And for my 2 cents, we need a special meeting. That's why we're here tonight, right? To help people keep on track with what they're trying to do. So I know you have commitments to employees and contractors and financial issues, so I'm assuming we would be supportive of considering something earlier if necessary, so.
We need to decide on that tonight, because like I say, when he gets notice to bidders out, it's going to have in there the date for the mandatory bid conference, when bids need to be submitted, and allow them to analyze.
Do you know what date you want them by?
Was that stipulated by Tim? I think we basically would go with the minimum by state
By
requirements. So
that's what I'm
once we have
saying.
it published, we have at least a minimum, I think, of 2
I would, if we're looking at, here we are on the 21st of May, I would think if we would have a special meeting on the 24th of June, if everybody's in agreement with that, then I can back dates up with Tim accordingly, and then we can
I
do.
think that would allow us to fit within the state parameters and would allow us to
Right,
bid it
right.
and get all the meetings and publishings done
Right.
and keep us moving.
And let me ask this, do we all have to be here for the awarding of the bids?
3 people, 3 commissioners, yes. The actual opening of the bids, no.
Okay.
And that, like I say, that special
Opening, no.
meeting, I can handle that with them, but in terms of the actual awarding of the bids, at least it's gonna take
I
at least
mean,
3 votes of the commission.
Let me suggest this, we will try to accommodate June 24th or something around that date, depending on the schedules of the commissioners. I'm seeing a lot of heads nod, so let's just go with that.
Then I'll get with Tim tomorrow, I'll get with you tomorrow, and we'll plug in the rest of the dates so we get the notice of bids out tomorrow then.
Sounds great.
All right.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Greg, team, thank you for your investment in Michigan City and believing in us. I know you've been a great supporter of the community and any number of fundraisers and other things beyond just selling high quality vehicles. So
We appreciate the consideration and assistance.
thank you. All right, progress. Item number 5. North TIF District Paving Project, Haas and Associates.
Good afternoon, Tim with Haas Associates. You should have a letter in your packet from us written to you on behalf of the mayor's office requesting funding in the amount of $600,000 for milling and paving Pine Street from Highway 12 to 11th Street and 9th Street from Washington Street to Wabash Street. The work would be completed this summer through the Board of Works and the city's paving contract or project. We, Haas Associates, would do the design engineering, put the plans out to specs through the board or to bid through the Board of Works, and then administer the contract through construction. Those fees are already in a contract we have with the Board of Works, so that's not included. The $600,000 is strictly for construction of milling and repaving those 2 streets or 2 street sections. And then if there's any, we don't know exactly what the bid's going to come in. But if the bid comes in lower than that for the milling and repaving, the excess funds would be used to make as many concrete repairs essentially as we can, in particular aiming at ADA ramps.
So message you're looking at for $600,000 in support this evening.
Yes, sir.
So it would be, just to give for the audience, we've had an annual basis more or less, they invested in a similar amount in the TIF districts to continue to invest in the city. It spurs other investment.
On an average, about $500,000 each year.
So it's actually a little bit above the average. So I'm pretty confident the mayor supports that. So all right. Anything you need to do from council on this one? This is paving in the North TIF district, $600,000. More or less a budget item, right?
Did somebody say or lay a record as to how this is important for redevelopment? Craig?
You want to try that? Or Mayor?
Well, I guess I can do one. I can also take a different, I guess, stance on that. And we did have our legal counsel from Barnes and Thornburg review this with us specifically to find out if this was a proper expenditure of TIF funds, and they did verify that is. So, although the statute is pretty clear about not using it for general maintenance purposes, this is a maintenance item that's allowable per state law, and so generally keeping the roads in proper condition in the North TIF district is a benefit to economic development because obviously the investment in making the roads look good obviously looks better to potential investors in projects in the north end. So
And it's not just a whole patch. Here, this is a complete removal and repaving.
Correct.
milling and paving. Yeah.
No, okay, thank you. All right. Any questions from the commissioners? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to move forward with this contract and this allotment of monies.
Second. It's seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your good work. All right. Item number 7. Looks like a similar project, though on the south side with another high-quality firm in our community. This is South TIF District Paving Project funding from Global Engineering.
And good evening, Martin Bobchek, Global Engineering. I had sent a funding request letter to the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission for the repaving of Franklin Street from US 20 to Valentine Court. this roadway is currently in the Pacer system. The city inventory has a 4 out of 10. Just driving it, it's actually degraded since the last evaluation. So it's actually closer to a 3 at this time. We submitted the cost estimate budget for milling and repaving of 5 inches of the pavement and addressing ADA ramps as needed, including durable pavement markings, adjusting manhole castings to grade, and full depth patching as needed. We have about 10% allotment in that number, and it's $1,049,971.20. That was an estimate that we put together for those limits and just for that scope of work.
All right. So
I would just say that we met with Global and the mayor recently, and we're presented with these numbers, and I compared that to basically the available funds and the anticipated projects in the South TIF, and I think that this number of about $1 million, a little bit over $1 million, is a reasonable number not to exceed based on, well, typically it's more than we invest, but we definitely need to do this project, and I just strongly suggest that it's a not to exceed number, and we do the most we can with that number, and do as much of this work as possible given that budget. So,
okay, so clarity for me, I guess, just to understand, in this number, does this include engineering, design,
engineering is
inspection?
also part of the other contracts that were mentioned.
Okay, so that's all
There's a
coming as
separate-
something separate.
yeah.
That's separate from the request from the Redevelopment Commission.
It's not part of this request.
Okay, that's what I just want to be clear on to make sure what's in what bucket and who's paying
That's
for
funded out of the city budget.
Global has a contract currently with the city through
Right.
Board of Works for
Right.
that purpose.
Well, just for budgeting purposes, it's important for us to understand where the money is. So, all right. So for $1 million plus paving on the south side, from our South TIF funds, recommendation from our city planners that we move ahead with this, and I understand this from the mayor also. What's the pleasure of the commission?
An amount not to exceed that.
Not to exceed this amount here?
Yes.
Okay.
Somebody want to make a motion?
I'd move to approve the not to exceed figure for the paving for Franklin Street as described.
If you would list the number.
Pardon?
If you would list the number not to exceed, just so it's.
Not to exceed $1,049,971.20. Second.
Real quick, as far as the schedule for this project, we were anticipating spring construction and letting this winter. Is this?
Yeah, I just want to
That's-
make sure
yeah.
that the reason is stated here because one, it's the gateway to the city, so it's the main entrance to the city. So I hope that we get bid or letting by fall or so and start the construction by spring. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands the schedule.
Spring of 2020?
Correct.
I don't know if that's what our understanding was.
Yeah, I don't know. Why couldn't it be let this summer and you work on it this fall? I mean, there's not much of a break in traffic anymore.
It just said there's a lot of construction happening for paving this summer. The city received, as you all know, Mayor, close to $1 million from the state. So
Yeah.
that's $2 million worth of construction. And there's a lot of projects happening in the city right now. My understanding, Pine and Washington will be probably under construction. So
Well, the question is, I
Will be a
guess,
lot
when you
of-
get bids from the contractors, right, are they going to bid or not? Is that where this comes from?
no, it's coming from traffic only. I mean, the traffic during the summer is much, much higher. So from traffic control and from just being the entrance to the city, it's the main artery for the city.
How
We
long do
feel
you anticipate the project taking?
Probably a month and a half.
So I would echo the mayor's, comment about if it's possible to do it this fall.
I would, if it's,
We'll try.
I'd say we let it in September and October construction. That's 2 months.
We'll try.
I mean,
That's fine.
letting it out in the spring and then going into June and July, I don't know if that,
No, letting in the fall. I'm sorry. My recommendation was to letting in the fall and spring construction. So
but spring is May and June. I mean, like this year, it's rained almost every other day. I mean, yeah, I'd say we do it this fall. But yeah, I mean, there is going to be a lot of construction because the state's doing their work. out on 20 too, and then there's a lot of that construction's out in Tall Timbers area. You know, the 2 million. And then sporadic throughout the city. There's some
Parker
paving.
Ave and
Barker Ave, yeah, but no, I'd like to get the work done this fall. Yep.
Okay.
We can make that happen?
We will shoot for that for sure, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Deb, did we get a second on that?
I think you did.
I believe
Yes,
Mr. Sheets did.
No, thank you.
Just want to make sure the schedule.
That's exactly why we
As
have
long
the
as we're good with
questions
the
and the
schedule.
dialogue, yes, thank you. All right, so it's been moved and seconded, and we've described when we want the letting to occur. Any other discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I think we had next item's global also.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips, maybe you want to lead this
Just,
a little bit, because I think there's some questions on
Just
this
there was some confusion. I think we just didn't have a representative from Global at our last meeting. So we continued this so we could just make sure we answer any questions. I know one of the things that was brought up was just a concern about basically the proposed angle iron blocking the backlit aspect of the sign, and perhaps investigating whether there was a way to break that up a little bit by either by word or maybe have some breaks in that to allow some of that backlight to come through.
We could do consistent circular cuts throughout the whole thing to pretty much let it.
Okay, that was a question that came up, so I just wanted to make sure we asked that. But otherwise, it's basically an idea is to strengthen the back of the letters. One of the questions that was asked was how come we couldn't just put the letters flush, is because it defeats the purpose of the backlit letters, the way that they were constructed, so that we had that backlit effect. Other than that, I have no other. That was my major concern. Was we didn't want to defeat the purpose of the backlit letters. So
yeah, if we had those openings, they'll diffuse behind it and look the same.
Otherwise, I would recommend approval of this, just so we can address this concern.
You would remind me what the dollar was, because I had it from the last one, but I don't think I have it.
I think the proposal was from Marcus Electric. It was $4,692.
Thank you. All right, so, and I guess one of the other questions that at least came from me was whether this is a worthwhile expenditure versus a short-term fix of the lettering on the wall.
Oh, so this was the short-term fix, and the question was the concern was, were we completely redoing the sign?
Okay.
And we're not. This is just to reinforce the letters. So if the city goes ahead and hopefully invests substantially in the South Shore Station improvements, this is just a temporary. Well, it's not. It's strong enough that it can be there for a while, but it's not a complete replacement of the sign or redesign of the sign. It's just a.
So you're confident that the $4,700 or so is a worthwhile expenditure of our hard-earned dollars?
I think that the sign is a nice addition to that area, and to make sure that it looks and functions properly is a good investment to continue our investment in that area.
All right. Other questions? What's the pleasure of the commission?
To approve.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I'll be in
Thank you
touch
very
with-
much. And the approximate time frame for this to get done?
I'm not sure if they have to order the piece or not. I'll get with Marquis and I'll update everybody in an email.
But I would anticipate it probably be done sometime in June at the latest.
Yeah, definitely in June.
So.
All right, thank you.
I don't have any other questions. We're all good?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Number 8. I think this is yours, Greg?
Yes. So as we all know, we own the former South Shore Station building. We've had some challenges over the years of just kind of maintaining the look of it, and it gets to be a little bit shabby if it's not maintained. So we think it's important to replace the existing plywood that in some cases is starting to pull away from the building. It's starting to look a little bit ratty and could use definitely a touch-up. So we reached out to Deutscher Construction to put together a quote for us. While we were out on site, we also noticed that the stairwell does not have a standard rail, and so some concerns about complying with code. The stairwell that leads down to the lower level of the building doesn't have a rail around the edge of it, and so we thought that was a pretty important thing to have as well.
From a safety
From
standpoint.
a safety standpoint, and so this proposal is to remove the existing plywood and replace it with new painted plywood, and minor framing repairs that would be needed to hold the plywood in place better, as well as fabricating and installing a pipe rail around that stairwell, as I stated. So the total cost of the estimate for that work is $18,000.
Obviously, it's not cheap to do anything anymore, seems like, so.
No, it's not.
Right, any questions, Mr. Phillips, on the project or not? I know, I think the mayor's office received a number of complaints on the look of the property, and I haven't heard anything officially from Nick D that they think it's kind of shabby, but wouldn't surprise me if it's image issue is hanging out there.
But we've gotten several complaints about the condition of the building and concerns about, perhaps needing to give it a
Well, if you're
facelift.
satisfied, Craig, with the pricing on it, I mean, I suggest that we consider it.
Move to approve the funding for the project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, item number 9. This is one that I'll try to summarize here a little bit. This is really kind of a preliminary request. There is a group of people that want to invest more in the community, and they have a concept for some significant art pieces to be placed around the city. Kind of fits with our create, play, repeat, edgy approach, and they're not quite ready to totally announce the project, but coming up here on as early as June 14th through the 24th, they would, maybe as even as June 12th, would like to start the art project on the You Are Beautiful site, and this will involve bringing in a more or less a canvas, if you will, not a canvas, but some item that will be painted in a significant way, and then over the course of time, a series of those will be taken off-site and assembled somewhere. So it's taking, it's actually developing a piece of art that may be as high as 50 or 60 feet tall, but piece by piece it will be painted on the You Are Beautiful site and then assembled off-site. And what I wanted to do was see what the pleasure of the commission was, where there was at least preliminary support for the use of the You Are Beautiful site to create some excitement in the city for a future significant art piece, pieces even. And I anticipate there would be some public announcement on this by the end of the month. So this is kind of a preliminary, let you know a little bit about what potentially is going on. So I don't know if I've described that well enough or just confused people with it or not, and they would comply with our standard form request for part of the Board of Public Works with the appropriate insurance, and any damage to the site would be repaired to.
I was going to say, with regard to the site, I think we would specifically ask for them to work with PR's landscaping to restore the site in this case, because we're talking about a pretty substantial, it's a substantial enough work area that they might do some damage to the site.
Sure.
And so I would ask that if we move forward with this, that we have them agree to work directly with our landscapers to restore the site at their cost. And so
I'm sure they're agreeable to doing that. They're trying to create some excitement with what they're doing here, and want to make sure that they do things in support of what the community wants. So,
can we talk generally about what it consists of?
I prefer not to at this point. Kind of preserve that for the.
So we'll have more information at our regular June meeting.
Yes, by the June meeting, it will be defined in scope substantially, and my question would be if they were going to try to use the site on June 14th or even 12th to the 24th, do they have to go in front of the Board of Works? How does that work on this request for the use of the site? We go have a 2-step process here, more or less, to use that property.
Alan, do you want to? They meet twice a month. They meet the first and third Mondays of the month. So June 3rd, and the deadline for those meetings, I believe, is noon on the Wednesday prior for submitting requests to the Board of Works, and those deadlines are pretty strict, so they need to adhere to that, as well. So it would be the June 3rd or the June 17th.
Ideally we'd have it on the
meetings.
3rd, so.
They would have to get that put together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
We can give approval tonight, though.
in
based on-
concept with.
In concept, based on Don's.
Well, basically,
description.
what you're asking for is essentially permission to use this property as a staging area for the project,
Yes.
Yeah.
which,
Do you have specific dates or locations? So, I mean, from only what I've heard tonight, is it going to run in conflict with the commitments to anybody else that's up there, the Levistic Center, whatever?
that was another question.
So are
was-
they going to be out in the area we're trying to keep in a prime
There'll be a-
location, or are we going to be on the other side where we park cars?
The artist is on more or less a 10-day window, June 14th to June 24th. And I don't believe that conflicts with any major use of the property.
No,
in that
because I believe
time
the
period.
use of the property would primarily be 4th of July for parking, if necessary. We haven't gotten that request yet from the police chief, but it may come. August, I don't remember the exact
For
dates, but the
their-
art festival,
Yeah, exactly.
Lebezic Arts Festival, and then the boat race. As before, we're
first week
using
in
the
August
property
too,
as parking for the boat
Right.
race. So, except the portion of the property where the chain link is, or the chain rope is.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want them to use that part of the property. So,
And also, are they gonna ask us for funds to keep it clean each day, or are they gonna clean up each day?
No, they'll maintain it per the agreement, so it stays nice and neat. If they did want to use the chained area and they were paired, whatever the chains were, is that acceptable or not?
I don't think we want to do that.
Okay.
I don't think we should do that because that detracts from the "You Are Beautiful" sign.
Okay, so
I
this
think
will be fine. That's fine. Just
they should use
need clarity.
the
Yeah.
remainder of the site where we would have people park normally.
It'd be easier to do everything too, doing it that way.
In and out.
Maintain the consistency.
Just easier to get in and out of the site. And
Yeah, the idea is to try to create some curiosity. So if I haven't created enough this evening, I'm sure it's going to get created here by the time it happens. So.
We might be creating a lot of confusion here. Also,
Yeah, sorry.
Also, when knowing what I know about this, people are going to wonder what's going on. So when is the point that they will be able to
Hopefully here by
explain
the end
that?
of the month, we will have you at some announcement. So we'll need to get on your schedule if that works. I'm assuming
Yeah,
you'd be
yeah.
willing to do that.
I mean, because at this point, if I was out in the public, I'd be wondering, what are they talking about? I mean, whatever art form this ends up being is going to be worked on in an area where it's
Highly visible.
right, and then moved off the property. The key is that they don't the public realizes that it's going to be relocated.
Yes.
That's why I said it's just a staging
It's
area.
just
Yeah,
a temporary item, right?
And also, is that gonna interfere with lawn care?
Well, that's
why I said I
coordination
would want
with
them
PR.
to work directly with Delau on the restoration of the site after the work is done.
The chained-in area,
Sorry, not Delau, PRs.
the chained-in area, isn't there test wells in there?
Yes.
There's test wells
There are
that
test wells outside that as well, so
have to be protected.
I would
Anyway.
think we would want to probably try to restrict the use of this to the northeast corner of the property. Just because I think that's the easiest access and probably least likely to cause issues with the test wells and the.
Sure. This
These
is nothing more than to try to create some interest and hopefully at a minimum amount of.
Well,
You have,
so the
Curiosity.
approval steps would need to be the Board of Works if they intend to be if they intend to be at the June 3rd meeting again. They have to meet that deadline for
Yep.
submittal, which is
Okay.
fast approaching. It's next Wednesday actually, and then us on June 10th in order to make that happen. So obviously a lot of information would have to come together pretty
I think-
quickly. You might want to have a representative of the Redevelopment Commission at the Board of Works meeting, just so the Redevelopment Commission is a board on at least kept
We have issues
kept
here.
abreast of what's going on with
Sure.
the request on the 3rd, I guess. We don't really know a lot about this, so it's kind of.
Well, I'll be there anyway, because I request from them.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers this whole thing's going to come together and work out. I didn't want you to get caught cold or felt
So
jammed.
this is
on
more
this
just a
supply,
heads up,
right?
and we're not looking
Exactly.
for approvals
I
tonight.
guess one question, Don. Are we talking one piece at a time?
Probably two.
Okay. Okay.
So a total of, I believe it's 6 pieces, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's just important. It's nothing negative. It's nothing bad. It's just takes up some space, and it will be a spectacle. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. More to come. So, Alan, you're suggesting we wait for official thing on our 10th meeting.
As long as you have enough time, they have enough time to do that.
I think this is a good enough. I'm not seeing anybody saying flat out no.
No, but why would they schedule the artist already, not knowing whether or not we have these approvals in place?
Well, because if we don't give it for approval for here, they will assemble it and do it someplace else.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be on this site. It's just, this is a high-profile site. Obviously, we designed it to be a high-profile site.
Yeah. So it'll happen whether on that site or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So if there are any other questions on that. Okay. Item number 10. Stanhope.
Okay, we previously had we still have a contract in place with Stamhold Consulting for public outreach and other project assistance with regard to the Central Plaza project. We have depleted the current contract amount that was agreed to for the contract, and I'd like to request additional funding. Mr. Morgan's participation in the project has definitely been beneficial, especially in connecting directly with various populations within the community and especially also the schools, and helping facilitate the conversations with the various educational institutions in town as project partners for the project. And so I would be requesting, and I don't have the paperwork for the actual contract amendment. It'll be subject to Attorney Cernek's review. I don't anticipate any issues there because it's basically the same as what we had before. Yeah, as an addendum. So I'm requesting an additional $25,000 to cover what we anticipate the costs associated with the work that Stanhope Consulting would be doing.
And in general, this is to help us make sure that we're
Making enough outreach to a broad section of the community. We made a commitment to do broad outreach to the community, and in order to maintain that communication and again ensure that the parts of the project that have been identified as a priority by members of the community, especially like I said, the educational components of the project and the community components of the project, we believe this is necessary to continue to maintain that as we go through the process of the approvals.
Okay. Questions from the commission?
I would move to extend this contract with this consultant.
For an amount not to exceed $25,000.
Okay.
Additional, right?
Yes.
Okay.
With, not to exceed $25,000.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Item number 11. Let's see, we have some representative of Michigan
Yep.
City Sanitary District.
Mr. Gorsica, if you wanna join us, I'll preface this if you want. So basically what this is a request from the sanitary district to utilize some of the remaining funding left over from the bonding. The bonding proceeds we received from the Ohio Street reconstruction project. We have always anticipated doing this project with part of the bonding funding since we initially started the project, and we have reviewed the remaining funds from the bond proceeds, and we believe we have adequate capacity to do this project as requested. Essentially what this is, I'll defer to Mr. Gorsica to talk about the specific details, but essentially this is a request for some stormwater improvements in the vicinity of Village Road and Crestwood Drive, which as we all know is relatively adjacent to the Ohio Street project, and connects to the Ohio Street project. So I believe Mr. Gorsica can discuss what the project consists of in more detail, and I believe also the project engineers from Haas & Associates are here as well, so they can further explain this. So I'll defer to Mr. Gorsica and Mr. Haas on the rest of this.
Okay, good evening. John Gorsica with the Sanitary District, and there is significant drainage improvements needed in the Village Road, Southwind Drive, along Crestwood Drive, and in the rear yards east of Ohio Street. The Sanitary District, in a step-by-step process, has entered into a professional agreement with Haas and Associates to perform survey and engineering work to improve this drainage situation. Before and during this time of the agreement, it was discussed that the preliminary engineering work and construction costs would be funded through the Redevelopment Commission's remaining funds for Ohio Street funding. If approved by the Redevelopment Commission, the sanitary district will manage the entire project, and after district board approval, pay all invoices and then seek reimbursement through the Redevelopment Commission.
So as I understand it, through a memo, and I apologize, we don't have a copy of that, but if you could verify this, I believe the request before us this evening would include anticipated construction costs, contingencies, and engineering costs related to engineering for the project not to exceed $950,000.
That's correct.
So
And I believe we have about $1.5 million in bond proceeds for this specific purpose remaining, and it would be our intention, once this project amount has been approved, then the remainder of that money would be used to repave, reconstruct as necessary Village Road, the remainder of Village Road. As much work can be done with Village Road.
Sorry for not passing.
So in essence,
I'm sorry, I didn't bring a copy of it.
Just a brief description of what may be going on.
So in essence, the Redevelopment Commission supported a bond for the Ohio Street project, which was supported by the City Council. The bids came in at such a good price that we actually have some room within the bond proceeds to actually do some related and at least partially anticipated work.
We anticipated it. We increased the bond amount actually in order to do this project, as you recall, and this and the other project as well. So just this is definitely in line with what the intent of the bond was.
Right, and I think and we actually had community people, at least one, show up arguing that we've had some water issues that have been pretty stubborn in this area for a long period of time, and this should alleviate that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this would be a continuance of the efforts we've already, put into Ohio Street, also Larkspur, now Village Road, and then trying to address some of the drainage problems that are very prevalent right now with the rains that we've had over the last 2 weeks and it being clay out there.
The type of soil primarily being a major issue.
This is going to contribute to alleviating it. It's not a total cure just because of the soil and the high water table at times and things like that, but definitely another probably we'll be getting near around $12 million invested out there. The one question I did have for Mr. Haas, because we are going to be using the remainder for paving and any other sidewalk work that could be done with whatever's allowed as far as what was the plan if you weren't doing anything to Village Road and you were putting this in, how are you going to restore? That's not included in that price?
Correct. Our current agreement with the sanitary district includes replacing anything damaged on the surface with like in kind. So we have to take out 200 feet of curb, replace it with 200 feet of curb in the same spot, the same elevation, sidewalk, asphalt. It didn't even include milling and repaving the entire street. It was just for patching the street as necessary for the pipe trenches and structures.
But that is included in your dollar amount.
This dollar amount includes the replacing
in-kind replacement, but not the paving of the
I
street.
get it. I understand, but
not
but doesn't that reduce if we're going to have it repaved? Doesn't that reduce somewhat?
Yes, it can. If the timing is right, where our contractor would tear up the road for the sewer project, if the city's going to follow up right away and timing works with paving, then we would just have the contractor bring the trench up to grade with stone. So that then
and it would be our intention to do so, and we've had some conversations about that, obviously, with Global Engineering about getting going as fast as we can on that project as well. So if we can coordinate that as best we can, that would be good.
That's what I was getting at. Timing is very important.
Now that we know the remaining dollar amount available for that purpose, then they can get to work on deciding what we can do with that remaining funding.
But it can't stay gravelled very long because residents get irritable quickly with that, and trying to maintain that is also problematic. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. and maybe I'm not looking at this right, Mr. Gorsick had said $955,000.
We had to go back, that was originally a request from November.
Okay.
We had to go back and revise the numbers, and so we asked Haas and Associates to go back, sorry,
And now it's,
revise the numbers.
now it's the 750,000?
But then contingencies built into that, so, and cost of engineering, so.
That's the question I had.
Yeah, so all that together, I reached out to Michael Cuss specifically to ask him to update the request. Originally, the request was $750,000. Now it's $950,000 due to the cost increases and just making sure the contingencies are taken care of.
Thank you.
Right. Sounds like we've got a good discussion. What's
Mr.
the
President,
pleasure?
I had one,
Yeah.
just want to clarify. I'd mentioned gravel, bringing it up with gravel. It won't have to be gravel. We could bring it up with the, the intermediate course, and then just leave that, and then when they come through with their project, they
Gotcha.
mill and pave. So
Gotcha.
it won't have to be gravel. And it'd still save money if we didn't put the surface on.
Right. I think you had it. Was your question clarified when we started this item? To me, you mentioned something.
Oh,
Well, do you have anything else?
I wanted to clarify for you that this does include, the cost of this also include the cost of engineering.
Nice.
The
Thank you.
Redevelopment Commission
Thank
is
you.
being
Thank
asked
you. I
to
just-
cover the cost of engineering
just-
for this particular project.
This-
That's what it was.
Yeah, thank you.
You wanted to,
Appreciate
you
it.
asked that before, so I just wanted to make
thanks,
sure that was
perfect.
clear.
Okay, just, I like to know what I'm talking about, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the project obviously would improve the livability out there, and it ties in nicely with the House Street project, so I'd move to approve.
Support.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'll verify the remaining amount of the bond proceeds and make sure that Global Engineering knows about that number specifically. I'll review it with our financial advisors to make sure that we're solid on that, and then hopefully pretty quickly turn around getting a request put together for the paving.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you. Good work by all. Let's move on to item number 12. Mr. Cernak, do you want to start this?
Back in June 15, 2017, the Redevelopment Commission entered into an project agreement with Pine Street Development LLC for the construction or development of the former Memorial Hospital property. And you remember, we've had enough discussion as to what the plan was on that. We hit several roadblocks along the way on some things we didn't anticipate, but we managed to fix those things. And so on January 11th, after a series of meetings with the developer, the Redevelopment Commission, lenders, and Don and myself, we entered into an amended project agreement on January 11, 2019 that had two, among other things, but had two key components. One was that the developer would have obtained funding for the project on or before March 31st, 2019. Otherwise, they would be in default. And that the project agreement called for what was called a cure period, that any kind of notice of default, either party was granted an opportunity, a 30-day period of time to cure the defect. We are now, so on March 31st, the developer had not obtained funding. On April 1st, I sent a notice of default required by the agreement to the developer, giving him 30 days in which to cure the defect. We are now past that 30 days. That would have been on or about May 2nd. So I just got kind of nervous on terms of what we need to do here in terms of comporting to the original project agreement. Hence, I wanted the discussion tonight to see what you guys want to do. In my opinion, you have three possible options in which to take. But I would recommend that you formally vote on whatever option you pick. The first option is simply to terminate the agreement. The agreement allows for that. The default occurred on December 31st. The cure period is expired. Notice has been given. So that certainly is one option, is we have the right to terminate that agreement. You also have the option of extending, once again, the cure deadline. But if you're going to do that, you should also make that in your motion tonight, that there would be to continue with this project and extend the cure defect by X number of days to allow me to give formal notice to the developer that once again they are on notice in which to proceed with that. The third option is to, and I guess the second and third one really kind of going together, and I have had discussions with the developer last week and then again yesterday or today, that in your discussions with the, if you should elect to extend the cure defect, you could either do one of two things. See if they could cure the defect in its current format, the project in its current format, or enter in discussions to modify the project and the scope of the project, and then proceed with identifying that aspect of it and curing the defect that way. My only advice, well, that's an option, my advice to you is not to do that last one. If we're going to modify the scope of the project, then we should terminate the project and enter into a new project agreement. And the reason why I'm saying that is that the history of this project predates my arrival on this commission. And I think from discussions we've had, I think it almost kind of predates yours.
Well, it was just being starting to be discussed when I arrived.
Well, I know since my experience, and again, Craig and Skylar can go further with it, but I know just in my experience with the scope of the project and the specifics of the project has been modified numerous times before we ever got to June 30th of 2017. So even though I said that you have the opportunity to do that, that certainly would be the least desirable, only from the viewpoint of clarification, which is what we're talking about.
So I think one thing that's been constant from all the discussions from the beginning of the project until now has been that it was our intention for a portion of the project along Pine Street to be mixed use in nature. So some sort of non-residential component to it in addition to residential in those buildings. So that has remained constant.
Right.
As far as the number of stories and the number of units and number of residential units and that sort of thing, and the nature of the development, the design of the development and things like that. Those things have changed.
And the way we ended up implementing it, I know, is different from when I first started. The way we ended up in terms of being a four-step process,
right.
Project 1, Project 2, etc. So I mean, those kind of things. I'm just saying, it just. Yes, there's been some consistency, global consistency from the very beginning. And if you want to do that, fine, you can do that, and we can make allowances accordingly. It certainly just makes it, I think, more difficult and more confusing. But all I'm asking for tonight is that I think you need to take an official action. I have gone as far as I can go with this in terms of enforcing the contract. I've given the notice of default. Notice of having a cure period, but we're at the we're at the end of my notice, so we need to do something different in because of the fact that the contract or the agreement doesn't allow us to do anything different unless we do something with it tonight.
So let me add just a little bit of that. So see we have some communication here today.
Right.
And maybe you could opine on that.
Sure. We, when I talked with the developer last week, and we went through numbers and we went through aspects, we talked about redesigning the first part of the project into being a sole apartment, luxury living type of project, and getting rid of the mixed use. And the developer assured me that if we did that, suddenly the funding problem that they had with the original design for Project 1 would go away, and that he could provide a term letter from one lender for modifying the project to demonstrate that he could get funding for the project if it was reconceptualized that way. So I did receive that, I guess yesterday. I didn't see it until today, but I sent that to you earlier, and I also distributed to you beforehand. The other thing that, as the developer and I talked, and Paul, by the way, is here tonight. I saw him walk in. But there's also a series of emails or just emails between the developer and the lender from First Merchant Bank that while they could or why they would be interested in continuing to work with this project, they still are in need of more additional information. The point being is the fact that while at this point the developer has not been successful in obtaining funding either by the deadline imposed by the agreement or by the cure period also imposed by the agreement, as he indicates that there is interest in receiving in providing funding for this project.
But as a modified project.
It's not retail on the first.
As a modified project, as my understanding of it. But I also would note that, and I talked to Paul earlier on this today, if you look at the May 20th letter from Wintrust, it's the subject matter is construction financing for mixed-use property located at the 5th and Pine Streets. And that, so there I was thinking that, okay, when we met last week, was I completely off base and misunderstanding that? And Paul, you can speak to this if you want, but Paul advised that no, there continues to be interest in funding. Just need to find a way to make it all come together for the mixed use property.
So I guess a couple things I would add is it's always been our intention for some aspect of this project to be mixed use from day one. So I want to put that out there. The second thing is, I know that just in having recently reviewed the financial, snapshot of the TIF funds in the north end of the North TIF, I know that the Redevelopment Commission is not in a position to provide additional funding
Beyond what we've
already
already
committed to this project.
Or maybe just clear it.
So those are a couple of factors that I think need to be taken into consideration. The discussion about full retail versus non-residential I think could potentially be had, but beyond that, I'm not sure how much flexibility we should really give, given the fact that representation has been made, along the way a number of times as to what the project consisted of, and drawings that we've seen and all that sort of thing. It's a little confusing as to how we have ended up in this position. I think we kind of have an idea, but I think that we need to take that into consideration.
So let me just one more point too that I forgot to mention earlier. One of the things, and this is again why I am, if you choose that last option that I said in terms of modifying the project, the reason why I would call for more study and a modified agreement is because no question will you be impacting the revenue streams coming in. And when Craig said that before in terms of what the TIF, looking at the current financial health of the TIF, we base certain things on this project based on revenue streams. And I'm not saying, I don't know enough to know whether it would decrease the amount. I'm believing, however, I'm assuming that if you decrease the size of the project, cut down, for example, on the number of units, luxury apartment units, and you decrease the revenue on that aspect of it and the corresponding decrease in the assessed value of it, we're also going to be having a decreased revenue stream. And whether that's good or bad, I'll leave that up to you.
All of our models, all of our commitments, our financial commitments, and all the investment we've made in the project has been based on understandings of those pro formas that were presented to us on that.
And that needs to be addressed in any kind of new agreement, clearly. So,
go ahead.
I think that if we're going to modify anything, it needs to be in the form of a new agreement. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of modifying the factors of this agreement, given the fact that we're committed to what we've already committed what we're able to commit to this project. So, like I said, I don't think we're in a position to offer any additional incentive, and I don't think that we should be put in a position of trying to modify the existing agreement haphazardly at this point, in all honesty, to try to adjust to that. I think it would need to be in the form of a revised agreement, and some things will definitely be done differently going forward if that were the case.
So, if there isn't any other discussion from commissioners, I was going to invite Mr. Gresham up to speak. But go ahead. Mr. Rowley.
Letter from the attorney makes reference to a update of Tracy Cross's market analysis. Have we seen that?
We have. We've seen the summary. I believe, actually, we've had the full,
Yeah.
I believe we've had the full thing delivered to us.
I got a copy of it last Thursday.
We have it full.
Now, whether or not we've had a chance to truly digest that information, given the fact that it's been, a short time ago, I don't know. But
Well, the reference to the fact that he evidently favors a single-use building would maybe again reaffirm that we ought to start over in an agreement.
And I guess I might want a second opinion on that market study as well, because in all honesty, it's a substantial deviation from what they gave us before, and in a very short period of time. I don't see how the market's conditions have changed that much in that shorter period of time, so we would definitely want to look into that further to better understand that, because that's a substantial deviation from the information we received from them before.
So my suggestion is, before we take any official action, we allow the developer to make some comments. Would you like to make comments, Paul? Sure.
As everyone has said, the project's changed multiple times over the past 3-4 years over here. The market study from Tracy Cross, the deviation, Craig, which part?
He was talking about the difference between, the market study was based on mixed-use residential previously, and this time around they're recommending only residential.
No, they're okay with the retail on the bottom.
Okay,
and
so there must be some confusion about that.
They've not changed their position at all, just so everyone's clear.
I don't know where that came from.
Okay, that study came out a few weeks ago.
Okay, I don't know where that came from.
Oh, my fault.
I honestly have not read the updated study fully.
Yeah, no sweat.
I read the summary, but briefly. But all this has happened very fast in the last several weeks here, and so I don't know. I wasn't sure where we got that information from.
Not a problem at all. I mean, there's too much going on. With as far what we would request is a 2-week extension to the existing contract we have in place, and 1 meeting with Don, Craig, and Alan to try and work this out with the way we have it right now, without changing anything.
I think that's about the most we can give, because I think the commission is in the position of wanting to change direction by our regular meeting in June, in order to kind of keep the project on track with some deadlines that we've kind of wanted to set. At the most, I mean, obviously it's up to the commission, but I wouldn't want to go any further than that. Given the situation we're in currently.
Well, let me ask a question to you here, Paul.
Sure.
So, I'm looking at the loan amount for $2.8 million. I thought was that always the price for the loan amount?
No, it depends.
Higher.
It depends if it's a 4-story building or a 3-story building. Okay, we've gone back and forth on that several times. Okay, so this is based on a 3-story building, retail on the first floor, 2 floors of apartments, okay, with the parking garage as drawn in the rear. Now, in regards to what kind of property taxes it generates, more than generates enough that over what the Redevelopment Commission has placed in here. I think with a 4-story building, we're generating $4 million, and I think with a 3, we're generating $3 million.
Over the course of
I think 25 or 30 years, well within the life of the building.
We're concerned about the life of the TIF, I think. So basically, about 20 years.
I could run those numbers too and have them for you.
I mean, I'm going to leave it up to my fellow commissioners, but just let me express a little bit. We actually had, as I recall, 2 modifications to the contract. Was one?
No, I was wrong when I told you that. With the first amendment that we were going to do was in the fall.
Okay.
But the actual First Amendment, that's why I'm saying it gets confusing. We actually called it the Second Amendment to the First Amendment of the project agreement. So, but that's the one that was signed.
So that's only. Well, let me ask this.
There was an original.
There's an original
umbrella kind of master agreement in 2017.
Right.
Then there was a modification in 2018.
No.
In March of 2018.
The First Amendment to the agreement was actually entitled, by the time we ended up finishing that, was the Second Amendment to the First Amendment of the project agreement, and that was executed with those dates on January 11, 2019. Which that's what I was thinking, because I know when we first started talking about that.
I just want to be clear, because
so we initially approved the umbrella, the master agreement. Then we did sub-agreements.
Oh, so
Those were in
that
2018.
had nothing to do with the amendment.
That was in 2018.
Right, those were nothing to do with the amendments
Right.
to the amendments to the original project agreement.
Correct. That was, but those were in 2018.
Correct.
And then the amendment we're speaking
those were
of,
the-
that was in January
As I
19.
recall, those are the individual elements defined within the 2017 agreement that had to be worked out as far as schedule and timeline and all the other modifications. So, I guess, let me just express a little bit of my frustration here is, and we've been working for a long time at this.
Yes.
And, you know, in essence, the reason we made the modification back in January was because we wanted to start the project in no later than this summer. And at that time, certainly a number of verbal commitments to us was that the financing would get locked down. Because originally, as I recall, at least in the conversations, there wasn't going to be any problem having financing by the beginning of March. And then before we put it to the agreement, we ended up with the end of March. We thought that was just fine. And then when we got into March, it's like we're still working on this financing rather than the cure, and we're going back and forth over similar questions on the project in terms of what we were actually going to do or not.
Well, part of the issue too is the project was designed as a precast construction, using a precast construction method.
Right.
And it's my understanding that the project estimates that were given by the architect were, I guess, underrepresented the actual cost of the project pretty substantially. The question is, if we were to consider going forward with some sort of a modification or extension or whatever, do we have the ability to, I guess, handle the redesign necessary to get the project within the budget amounts necessary with a different method? I mean, I think that's what was being explored, but it became a question of time and probably the expiration of this agreement. So that's a big concern. Is all those numbers would have to be readjusted and has any how much work has been done to that effect up to this point to make that possible?
What we have is we have two other architects that we shared with you guys. Ton and Blank are willing to work on the architectural, and we had Halliburton and Root from Chicago that'll work on the architectural. Both of them believe they can bring it in at 175 square foot, which puts us at 200 a square foot roughly with soft cost. The current building we have, as Craig said, came in well over $250 a square foot. Okay. So part of what we're doing is going back and redrawing the building with different components. Doesn't make it any less attractive. And the second part we have is with the financing. It's not a matter of getting the financing, it's just structuring it correctly. And both of those items came up in March and April. We were unaware of them January, February until we got to that point.
Now the other.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. With the First Amendment, it's subject to Section 13, and Section 13 is subject to the cure period. And in the cure period, as long as we're diligently working to resolve it, we're okay.
You have 30 days.
That's not what I read today. It's not what I read before.
Cure period shall mean a period of 30 days after a party failing to perform or observe any terms and conditions of the agreement to perform or observed by it received notice specifying the nature of the failure, provided that the failure is such that the nature cannot be remedied within 30 days, despite reasonable diligent efforts in the 30-day period shall be extended as reasonably may be necessary by the defaulting party. But we're not at that point. And I understand what you're saying, the way you're reading into that. It's a hard and fast 30 days unless there are things that are well beyond your control.
Well, redrawing the architectural is beyond our control. And when we were given a cap rate previously by the lender,
That's not what was contemplated by the agreement. That's not what was contemplated by the cure period.
okay.
All right, so any number of us want this project to be a tremendous success. If it was an easy project to do, it would have been done, completed 8-10 years ago. We've had the memorial site for some period of time. Craig and his team and Alan and others have invested a significant amount of time in this.
And we've invested a significant amount of resources into
Exactly, into the
site work, utility
Right.
work, prep work. that we would have to do, regardless of when the project is actually constructed.
So I'm going to leave this up to the commission on what they would like to do, but my recommendation, and don't mean a ill intention to you,
Understood.
Paul, and what
Understood.
you're doing, is that I'm not sure I can burn up any more brain cells on working on this project the way we're working together now. And my recommendation is that we terminate the agreement, and that you be considered along with other developers as we gear up to develop the site. That's my recommendation. If you want to grant Paul a couple of weeks to try to, and somebody else be on the team with us to discuss either modifications or some type of cure, some way, I'm going to leave that to the commission. But
again, I would stress that we're not in a position to commit additional incentives.
Understood. No, I get that.
Or funds
it's
for
really
this
more
project.
Understood.
But he can do something on his side. It's not us doing it on our side.
Right.
So.
But that was, and I know there was mention of our potential of that, and we're not in a position to be able to do that.
Right.
Understood.
So, any further discussion from the commission members?
I think it's just for the public's point of view that they understand that all the investment in infrastructure that has taken place and the investment from the Redevelopment Commission, which is the City of Michigan City, is an investment that we will not lose on, regardless of who develops there. That was needed.
We had to do all that to make the
infrastructure that needed to be put in place.
Shovel ready.
Yeah, because I think some will be quick to say that although the Redevelopment Commission, the city, lost money on that investment there, that's infrastructure that will be necessary for whoever builds there. And I mean, it's just my point of view that this has been being worked on a long time, and there's been a lot of modifications and alterations and conversations, but we're still don't have certain things that should be in place. And I just it's time to move on. In my opinion, it just we shouldn't be here tonight. We should have already had a ribbon cutting, and there should be things happening. There's been a lot of energy of city departments and personnel, and it's just time to get somebody that's ready to move and has the financing in place, in my opinion.
All right, so we do need to take specific action this evening. Are there other comments or questions?
Just comment on one more thing based on what Paul said. Even still, if you're inclined to have one more sit down with Paul, I'm taking the position of the agreement that I need to give them notice that the cure period is extended for 15 days, up to and including the date of our next meeting. But that's so.
I guess.
So what you're doing is, again, you're taking one of two motions that can be made and voting on: terminate the agreement or extend the cure period 15 days or whatever.
I guess I like the idea of just those of us who have been involved in this arrangement for the last almost 8 years, probably 7 years at least. I just think we're at a point where there are still too many contingencies to move forward with this agreement the way it is, and perhaps the best way to go would be, and maybe this is the impetus needed for Paul and his partners to put together a project that works is to consider this, to consider a project proposal from him and his partners along with others, and if it meets the merits of the consideration at the time, then we obviously can revisit
they
that.
obviously have a leg up too, because they've got a lot of time
Right,
invested
but
already. So that
I think just honestly in the just for the sake of everyone's sanity, terminating this contract because of where we're at currently, and perhaps considering a new contract in the future would be the way to go. That'd be my recommendation. I think there's just too many contingencies, too many details that have to be worked out that probably should have already been worked out.
all right. So,
Whether you
Mr. Overly,
whether you terminate or discuss, the notice is going to be for 15 days, right?
I'm sorry?
No, if you terminate, it terminates.
I thought you said your notice would be for 15 days.
What I'm asking you to do is make a motion tonight on one of two motions. One motion is terminate the agreement, or the second motion is you're hearing what Paul is requesting, and you're making a request to extend it, or you're making a motion to approve a motion that would extend the cure period for X number of days. I would think the last
Not
thing
beyond
would
June,
be,
not beyond June 10th for in any case.
well, as I was saying, we need to have it by June 7th, which is the Friday before our meeting. So,
But
that's what I'm saying is that
But
I
no.
one of two things.
Yeah.
All right, what's the pleasure of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to terminate the agreement.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Paul.
It's okay.
All right, item 13, report by legal counsel.
Just the only thing I will have a notice, and pursuant to the terms of the agreement, to the effect of the motion tonight, or the approval tonight, to terminate the agreement to them, it'll be in the mail tomorrow.
Report by director.
Just to remind the members of the commission that I will be giving an update or an overview of our 2018 annual report, as well as I'll be on hand. Don and I will be on hand to try, to answer whatever questions would come up with regard to the recent
Cash
flow analysis and bond capacity report that was as requested by Mr. Stimley be given to the council, and I believe the council also received a copy of the state report that we do annually to the state on the general TIF report. So just so you're aware, if anybody would like to join us and
Yeah, but I'd
continue
encourage you to join us, frankly. But,
tonight at the city council meeting.
all right, let's see. Any public comments? Let's see. I think everybody in the public has already commented. So, any other public comments? All right, commissioner comments.
I just want to say on the Pine Street project, I know I'm the newest guy here, but I really think we went the right decision this evening, and whatever comes out, we need to get this ball rolling so we can have a more positive effect of what's going out there for that project.
Thank you.
Like I said, if Mr. Dresden and his partners choose to submit a new proposal, and we feel that proposal is the best one to consider, perhaps going forward, then that's fine. But I think we have to start fresh. And like you said, maybe he has a bit of a leg up on the competition in some ways, but there are some things that need to come together to be able to happen, to make that happen.
So let me argue this.
And we intend to take steps, obviously, to get going on that process by most likely pursuing a very short period turnaround on an RFP from a list of an invited list of developers. And we'll definitely have more information on that process at our June 10th meeting.
So what else has happened here over the last 4 or 5 years, if you will, is we have at least 4 or 5 developers unsolicited coming to our community, want to do significant projects in the community that we didn't used to have. And I think that comes from the work of many of us pulling together in the same direction, of course, significantly under the leadership of the mayor. But the activity going on around here and the new investment, I mean, I'll comment later tonight about the $1 billion worth of new investment that's occurred in the last few years here. It's certainly, in the time I've been in Michigan City, unprecedented. And so positive investment and leadership creates an opportunity for other people to want to invest in our community. And my sense is, to your point, Commissioner Sheets, is that this next go around with the number of people that are interested in the project, I think we'll have a number of really good people to pick from. And
Exactly.
that's what we want to do. So, all right. Any other commissioner comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just to add, by the way, John, I've been on the same time you have amount of time so far, so I'm new too. Might add a little chump, but I think that we were more than fair in the length of time and duration that this developer has had to work with the Redevelopment Commission, so I think that needs to be made clear. When you start talking about 6-7 years, I mean, I don't want to compare the Singing Sands phase 1 to this, but which we finally have accomplish something there.
So happy that that's going to be going to construction.
Yeah, that's great news.
So happy we are on that.
And then to reemphasize once again that the infrastructure investment that the Redevelopment Commission is not wasted money. It will be utilized and is quite honestly shovel ready, and is an incentive to the next developer. And as Mr. Babcock has indicated, we've got several that have inquired over the last year or so. But thank you.
Wonderful. Any other commissioner comments? All right, so if you're available at 6:30, we'll be back in the city council this evening, and we're almost up against that. Motion to adjourn? All right, we're adjourned, and our next meeting is on June 10th.